Welcome to another stage analysis video. It's Sunday the 4th of June 2023. I'm going to start off this weekend's video going through some of the stage 2 continuation breakouts and breakouts on volume this week briefly before getting into the more regular content. There's been obviously a lot happening at the end of the week this week, so lots to go through in terms of the market breadth changes and obviously what's happening in the indexes, etc. So, and then we'll get to the watchlist stocks at the end of the video. So, as I said, to start off this video with going through some of the stage 2 movers on volume. So IOT, a big one this week, highlighted it in the watch list again earlier in the week before the earnings release, and then on the earnings release evening again as it started to move in the after hours on good volume again. So actually had a really, really good stage 2 continuation breakout into the end of the week. If we just go back down to the daily chart of this, so the after hours move closed about 21ish, was around this point, and then obviously gapped up in the pre-market, moved further, and then opened up and had a good run into the day, another 10-15% on the day. Actually had a 27.88% move on the day. If you see on the daily chart here, it's been in this sideways range for a little while. So since the stage 2 move started to break out into stage 2, this point through here back in late January, early February here. So it was just at the start of February when the rest of the market started to top out. This actually continued into early stage 2 and had a really, really strong rally. So it was a big fan favorite for a little while, as obviously it was one of the only stocks moving at the time, but then has been consolidating for a few months now. It's come up in the watch list 4 or 5 times throughout the course of March and April, and then again in May, before I started moving on for this continuation breakout attempt again. So you can see it's up over 80% since the stage 2 breakout. We're now, I think, about 18 weeks into the stage 2 advance here. So yeah, 18 weeks since the stage 2 breakout began. So obviously just over 4 months or so now. We're now moving into what's known as the turbulence zone. So this is the IPO week low here. So we just started to move back through this and now into obviously the initial area where it broke out from the IPO and consolidated before rolling over into this stage 4 decline. So now into potential turbulence zone. Could obviously get quite choppy through this area, but obviously good move in the near term and some exceptional volume coming into it. So obviously institutional volume. One thing I wanted to highlight on this was the increase in volume this has seen since the stage 2 breakout. So there's your stage 2 breakout week here, and you can see obviously through the initial stage 2 breakout move there had an acceleration in the volume before a little short-term buying climax through here. So buying climax is on a weekly basis, we have a new 52-week high, and then it closes the week lower. So this is an official buying climax bar here. Actually, that happened the week after, but obviously got close to that at the end of the week, the prior week there, and obviously some strong volume. So when you see obviously blowout volume after a fast and sharp move, then you can potentially consider that what we call a short-term buying climax, and then you're looking for the signs of a base structure to develop. So buying climax, automatic reaction, secondary test, up thrust, spring type action, and then a sign of strength bar continuation. So this is what we consider a reaccumulation base in the Wyckoff method. Obviously, when you incorporate that into stage analysis, it can obviously be really, really useful for defining your entry points and refining them as such. As you know, obviously you're looking for entry points in phase C and phase D of the base structure, and not early in the base structure when the initial obviously buying climax or macro rally secondary test occurs. That's your like phase A area. So at that point there, it's not very interesting. But once it starts moving through and developing a base structure, you then get into the latter part of the base structure and it becomes much more interesting again. So this one obviously looking good here. I wanted to add the volume on this just quickly to show you. So if we had a 10-week on the weekly, I tend to use a 10-week in the method. In the book originally, Stan always talked about the 4-week, but I found it too volatile for my taste. So actually most of the time use a 52-week, but just for the purposes of showing the increase in volume over the last, obviously 10 weeks is the equivalent of 50-day moving average as well. So you can see the change in volume, average volume down here. So you can see we've actually gone from this level to we're up to that here now. So it's basically doubled since the stage 2 breakout began in terms of the actual volume profile here. So much more interest in this stock as it's moved into stage 2. Obviously, a little bit of distributional behavior in that base was obviously a very choppy one, but it is an early, what we consider an IPO stock still. It's only a few years in since the IPO, so hasn't yet made higher highs since that IPO advance there. So at the moment, obviously one of the strongest movers at the moment, a little bit short-term extended now, so be looking to see this can consolidate in this potential area around here and then potentially make a continuation attempt to move towards the highs again. Get back to next up, we've got MongoDB. This also made a earnings gap move on Friday. That's a much bigger move in terms of the opening move, and then didn't have a great day in terms of going anywhere. It was actually slightly down on the day in terms of from the open to the close. You see from the black candle here, I use hollow candlesticks, so black means it opened higher and then closed lower, but obviously it was still up 28% on the day, but all of its move happened in the after hours trade there. So this one's been coming up in the watch list for a while. It's a bit of a laggard that's now started to come back into focus. So if we go back to the weekly chart on this, you can see obviously the stage 2 breakout attempt happened 4 weeks ago now. So it has been lagging behind. It was this significant bar area which was the main concern with this one, in terms of there was a lot of obviously volatility through this area, but this area here is where it needed to clear in order to start to get through some of its resistance. If we add the Ichimoku cloud onto this, just to give an example, we can see that obviously just starting to clear the top of the cloud structure here, but it's had a big move through it, so this could need to back and fill for a while, potentially back towards this 300 level maybe. So as it's now coming into an area of resistance here. So if we look at it on the straight pane across there, it's coming through this area of choppy behavior, so right in a resistance zone at the moment. So I'd be looking for this to develop potentially through this area and obviously not undercut this bar. Ideally with significant bars like this, you don't really want to see it give back much more than half of that range, so ideally consolidating in the upper half of that bar. SOFI, so this one hasn't been on the watch list for a very long time now. So I think last time I was talking about it was back here in October time maybe, when it was starting to come back out as the original, this initial structure here, selling climax, automatic reaction, rally, secondary test area through here, started to develop a base structure. So at this point through here, it was starting to look interesting. There was some spring type action. It was starting to move up again, but it rolled back over again, made lower lows, so couldn't complete that move, couldn't make it back above that 30-week moving average, rolled over again. But obviously that base structure still exists. It's now a much bigger base structure, so over a year old now. So this turned into a terminal shakeout in phase B of the structure. So we've now got a potential new spring type action in this one. It actually has moved through this near term significant bar here. So with a new, obviously reversal significant bar here in the other direction. So a little bit of spring type actions. We're looking for a sign of strength, obviously to break it out into early stage 2 there, potentially back up and continue up on and out into stage 2 potentially. Obviously that would be the ideal. Might need to, obviously if it can, you might need to develop a consolidation structure within here. This is a big move in a short period of time, so it could need to consolidate before obviously making an attempt to move out into stage 2. Could still fail just as easily, but you can see it's up at its 3 ATR level here in the near term, so obviously could need to come back and fill a bit before obviously making a higher attempt. Obviously if it starts to undercut this level here where this obviously significant bar happened, then starts to get back underneath there, then would obviously be very negative. So